All right, this is crazy, guys. When I saw this clip, I couldn't believe my eyes. So Trump was out doing a rally. By the way, his trial for the hush money payment starts today. So he's going to be going back and forth between campaign rallies and the courtroom. That should be very interesting. But he does this rally the other day in Pennsylvania. And the crowd starts chanting. This is a MAGA crowd. They start chanting, Genocide Joe, which is like the key left-wing critique of Joe Biden. And Trump totally goes along with it, goes with the flow, and is like, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. So here, I'll play it for you, and then we'll react. I got a lot to say about this.
Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe!
They're not wrong.
Genocide Joe!
They're not wrong, he's saying.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. He's done everything wrong.
He's called Genocide Joe, typically by left-wing protesters, because he is arming and funding Netanyahu of Israel as he does in ethnic cleansing and a genocide of Gaza. 41,000 Palestinians now dead, 36,000 of them civilians, 15,000 children, 9,000 women, has bombed churches and mosques and hospitals and schools and UN buildings and marketplaces and roads. They're doing collective punishment of 2.3 million Palestinians with a medieval siege where they can't get food or fuel or water, even though there's only 30,000 Hamas members. That's why he's called Genocide Joe. His unending support of Israel. Here's Trump talking about this the other day.
Have you spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu? Obviously, the White House is issuing its stark warning. Do you think that the U.S. is not doing enough to show support for Israel, or are you going to go?
Biden has totally lost control of the Israel situation. He has abandoned Israel. He's totally abandoned Israel. And frankly, you know, he's a low IQ individual. He has no idea where he is and who he's supporting. He doesn't know if he's supporting the Palestinians, but he knows one thing. He is not supporting Israel. He has abandoned Israel. And any Jewish person that votes for a Democrat or votes for Biden should have their head examined.
His key criticism of Joe Biden is that, quote, he's abandoned Israel. He's abandoned Israel. People chant Genocide Joe at Biden because he hasn't abandoned Israel. What am I going to do with these people, man? What am I going to do with these people? By the way, a little bit of insult to injury, a little more salt in the wound here. It's from the other day, and the GOP's promoting it. America supports Israel. So if it's Genocide Joe, it is also Genocide Don. And by the way, what would he do differently compared to Joe Biden? My guess is the policy would be almost exactly the same. The difference is Trump wouldn't even put on the show of like, hey, I'm against these war crimes. Hey, Israel should be more targeted and not get civilians. My guess is the policy would be exactly the same without the whole dog and pony show where they pretend to care about human rights and international law. And if anything is possible, it could have been an even greener green light that Trump gave them. Remember, guys, Trump is the one who moved the embassy to Jerusalem. And that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for Palestinians and Hamas. That was a giant middle finger to them. The Abraham Accords, a giant middle finger to them. The whole point of the Abraham Accords was to say fuck you to the Palestinians and try to normalize with other Arab states in the region. And guess what? Trump took $100 million on 2 separate occasions from Sheldon Adelson, whose main issue was Israel, and Trump basically admitted, yeah, I had Sheldon Adelson running my entire Israel foreign policy. So you want to talk about a corrupt puppet? And this is just like that fucking... How many times have you heard the reason why I support Donald Trump and the reason why I'm against Joe Biden is because Donald Trump is anti-war. How many times have you heard this? I hear it all the time. Even at this late date, I still hear it. Well, what's the reality? I got endless criticisms of Joe Biden, as you know. With Donald Trump, he increased drone strikes 432%. He kept us in Iraq and Afghanistan, even as he promised we're going to get out of there. he assassinated General Soleimani, the top Iranian commander who was on the field fighting ISIS. That was an illegal assassination, and it sparked retaliatory strikes against our troops. More on that in a minute, by the way. He tried to coup Venezuela. He ripped up the Iran agreement, which led us to where we are right now. He pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, for example. I guess that's not just foreign policy. That's also kind of domestic. Now he says he wants war with Mexico. He armed Saudi Arabia as they were doing a genocide in Yemen, and literally vetoed legislation which would have made it so we stopped arming Saudi Arabia as they did a genocide in Yemen. The list goes on and on, man. By the way, I like this post here from Michael Tracy about this. The self-serving low IQ history of how Trump's assassination of Iranian General Soleimani supposedly unleashed an era of peace and tranquility across the Middle East is so painfully idiotic. In one of the most brutishly stupid acts of Trump's entire presidency, he and his rabidly interventionist Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, manufactured a fake pretext to launch the brazen, region-destabilizing attack. Trump fabricated what his administration claimed was a self-defense rationale for the assassination, arguably the most severe instance of direct state warfare between the U.S. and Iran since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. Trump and the hardcore interventionists and regime change fanatics with which he filled his administration actually tried to invoke the 2002 authorization for use of military force in Iraq. Yes, the Iraq War resolution that Joe Biden infamously voted for as a justification for the Soleimani strike. They lied and claimed there was an imminent threat to the U.S., parroting the Bush administration's language used to sell the Iraq invasion. They even absurdly claimed that part of the rationale for the assassination was that Iran had provided material support to the 9/11 hijackers. No argument was too preposterous. The drone bombing of one of the most prominent figures in Iranian society effectively destroyed any prospect of future diplomatic engagement between the U.S. and Iran. Millions flooded the streets in protests, including in Iraq, where the drone strike took place. U.S. embassies and other installations were hit with rockets and ransacked. The Iraqi parliament demanded the immediate expulsion of all U.S. troops from the country. But rather than take this opportunity to finally extricate U.S. forces, Trump refused and kept them there. Reprisal attacks were launched against U.S. troops and continued for months, with 62 soldiers receiving Purple Hearts for the traumatic brain injuries they endured from Iran's retaliatory missile strikes. Trump loaded up his administration with anti-Iran regime change obsessives like Pompeo, Mike Pence, John Bolton, Nikki Haley, among others, deferred to the fanatically pro-Israel prerogatives of his chief financial patron Sheldon Adelson, and was heralded by Bibi Netanyahu for carrying out the most hardcore pro-Israel and anti-Iran policy agenda of any president in U.S. history. This was all part of the so-called maximum pressure strategy against Iran, favored by Netanyahu and the fanatically pro-Israel GOP establishment, to whom Trump essentially handed over control of his administration. As with many issues, there's been more continuity between the Trump and Biden administration than either like to let on. With the cratering of U.S.-Iran relations continuing to this day, Trump still brags about how much pointless suffering his crippling sanctions, a term borrowed from Obama, inflicted on ordinary Iranian citizens. On the one hand, MAGA will brag about how unwarlike Trump allegedly was, but on the other hand, they'll brag about how awesome it was that he drone assassinated Iran's top military official and hurtled the region into chaos, the consequences of which still reverberate today. This pro-Trump argument is idiotically schizophrenic, but that's nothing new for low IQ partisans. Damn, son. We'll end with something a little more lighthearted in a second, but again, we have here people at a MAGA rally saying Genocide Joe. By the way, there's a question. Are those like left-wing protesters who are kind of trolling? Or are they just Trump people who are adopting the criticisms of the left against Joe Biden? I don't know what the answer is. Genuinely, I don't. But I will say this. We do live in like a post-ideological era, don't we? Because Trump doesn't really believe much of anything. His MAGA people don't really believe much of anything. They believe in Trump. Again, it's like a very cult-like obsession with Donald Trump. They think he's the savior. They think he's the emperor, overlord, god king. That's how they treat him. And all the polls show they trust him over family members and friends and religious figures and anybody else. And so if Trump came out tomorrow and said, I'm in favor of universal health care and the government should provide it, every one of the MAGA supporters would be like, that's right. Medicare for all, single payer. But since he's not in favor of it, it's, oh no, that's a government takeover of healthcare. That's socialism. That'll lead to people dying. It's horrible. We hate it. We believe in capitalism and free markets. So it's post-ideological. And I have to say, it drives me crazy. It's because it's like we live in a post-truth world where truth doesn't matter. Genuine feelings or policies don't matter. Everything is just like posturing and playing a game. And so now you get MAGA voters who are saying Genocide Joe as they support Genocide Don. who supports all the same policies as Biden and maybe even worse vis-a-vis Israel. I don't think October 7th would have happened if it wasn't for the embassy being moved and the Abraham Accords. I don't think it would have happened. All right, so now we get to this. Same rally. We get this glorious, classic Trump moment where he's just babbling and he ends up saying funny things.
Theirs was much worse. It's where the Army weathered its brutal winter at Valley Forge, where General George Washington led his men on a daring mission across the Delaware, and where our Union was saved by the immortal heroes at Gettysburg. Gettysburg, what an unbelievable battle that was, the Battle of Gettysburg. What an unbelievable, I mean, it was so much and so interesting and so vicious and horrible and so beautiful in so many different ways. It represented such a big portion of the success of this country. Gettysburg, wow. I go to
Gettysburg, wow. It was so vicious and so brutal and so beautiful in many ways. Oh my God. He just goes up there and has verbal diarrhea and is hilarious and then gets votes for nothing. Anyway, there you have it. We got Genocide Don criticizing Genocide Joe, and I want to go shove my head in a meat grinder. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now.